At this time, I will call on Mr. Frisch and Ms. Toland for an update from the Joint Environmental Task Force.
Okay, we're excited. Ms. Smallberg, do you have the presentation? Fantastic. So I'm proud to go ahead and get us started here, and Carl and I will be tag teaming through the presentation. We are both the school board liaisons to the Joint Environmental Task Force, which is a joint task force between the county government and the Board of Supervisors and the Fairfax County School Board. Next slide, please. We won't read through this whole thing, but the mission of the Joint Environmental Task Force is really to join the political and administrative capabilities of both the county and the school system to proactively and equitably address climate change and environmental sustainability. We had community members assigned to the JET, and the JET provided a forum for informing, advising, collaborating, and addressing county-wide issues and aligning our institutional policies. So we can go on to the next slide. Just a little bit of background on this is the JET was started in April 2019, and I will credit the former chairman of the Board of Supervisors, Sharon Bulova, and at the time our school board chair, Karen Corbett Sanders, for sort of leading the way and establishing the Joint Environmental Task Force at a meeting in April 2019. Throughout the summer, community members were selected to serve on that task force, and the meetings for the JET began in September of 2019 with their first meeting. A lot of the work occurred, Mr. Frisch and I joined the task force when we were appointed in January, and so we've been working very closely with them up until today on putting together. We had several subcommittees that worked on specific goals that we'll go through in the presentation here, and through the January to now October timeframe, we set up aspirational goals around energy and energy conservation, workforce development, transportation, and waste reduction. So those recommendations were put forward by the combination of citizens and staff members, both in the county and the school district. They were adopted in September. And then what is happening this week, which is quite exciting, is that the Board of Supervisors presented the report and the goals and voted on it and passed them on Tuesday of this week. And then tonight, Mr. Frisch and I are presenting this to our colleagues at the school board, and Mr. Frisch will explain in a motion later that we are looking to gain approval, similar to what the Board of Supervisors did, for us to turn these goals and recommendations over to staff to come back to us in the spring with a recommendation on how we can potentially reach these goals and recommendations and what the budgetary implications will be. Next slide, please. We want to just show you the long list of FCPS people that have been involved from various departments. We also had two student representatives, which we are super proud of. Wendy Gao served on the energy subcommittee, and Eric Kim served on the workforce subcommittee. Our previous school board members, as I mentioned, Karen Corbett Sanders was involved from the very beginning. Dahlia Pelchik and Pat Hines were both involved too in putting JET together in the beginning. And then, as I mentioned, Carl and I have been involved since January. A huge shout out to our energy experts, Justin Moss, John Lord, and Eric Bruner in design and construction, Francine Furby for all of her expertise in transportation, Rachel Dahmer and Mac Bechtel from CTE helping us out with workforce, And then, of course, our Get to Green experts, Donna Volkman and Allie Coolhane. And then we had 3 teachers from Bailey's at the preschool program that had some incredible experience and expertise in waste management. So they helped us out as well. So a huge thank you to all those staff people. The energy goals, I will be going into that. That was, you can see some of the subcommittee members there. Supervisor Dan Stork headed up this group. You can go to the next slide. And here are our recommendations. We've got 2 slides of recommendations around energy. The big one is to commit to being energy carbon neutral by 2040. And in order to be carbon neutral, we are going to have to do serious energy conservation efforts and also really up our use of renewables. And, you know, we're on our way with that. Most people are aware, most of my colleagues at least, that we do have some work moving forward to put solar panels on the rooftops of our schools and to do some canopy installations at our schools as well. By canopy, we mean maybe on in a parking lot, you know, having solar panels over the parking areas or, you know, other places on the ground. We're looking to achieve 50% emissions reductions by 2030. Our school district has done pretty incredible work on this already. So we're kind of leading the way here and looking to work with the county to do this even further. Producing 25% of our county energy from in-county renewable energy generation by 2030, 50% by 2040. Next slide, please. So, oops, go back one. So we will need to decrease our energy use from all county facilities by 25% by 2030 and 50% by 2040. And all new county buildings and major renovations beginning planning and design in 2021 and beyond must achieve net zero energy performance. If you recall back to January, in a time before COVID, when we approved our CIP, we did have an amendment to our CIP that asked for all of our new construction to be looking at net zero energy performance. So we already have that as one of our goals and recommendations for the school district. And now I will turn it over to Carl to talk a little bit about transportation and waste management.
Thank you very much. I first want to thank our board colleagues for indulging us. This is not a normal report, right? This is something that is more than a year and a half in the making. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide and dive in on transportation. This is the committee, the subcommittee that I chaired, and I was joined by Susan Stillman and Richard Clayton and Karen Camplin. But we also had a lot of great advocates from Out Front and others who were instrumental. We can go to the next slide. So really quickly, the transportation recommendations are to transition the Fairfax Connector diesel bus fleet to electric by, I should say, 2030, not 17 years ago, and FCPS by 2035, to transition the non-bus fleet to electric or other non-carbon emitting alternatives by 2035, to install charging infrastructure to scale as the fleets grow, with an emphasis on coordination with the county so that the county can take advantage of our infrastructure and we can take advantage of the county's infrastructure. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. To fuel these electric vehicles with 100% non-carbon emitting fuels and carbon offsets by 2030, to take advantage of grant funding for electric buses and charging infrastructure, to reserve parking for electric and hybrid vehicles at county and FCPS facilities. You can go to the next slide. And to improve options for safe biking and walking, to school, to work, to public transit, develop a safe and continuous and interconnected system, increase access to grid improved bike share systems, to encourage trail path use by students, workers, and residents. A lot of this will come into the county working on its overall plan. They're redoing the bike plan that they had to include trails and other systems. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So waste reduction was chaired by Supervisor Penny Gross from Mason District. You can go to the next slide. And they have, and again, many of these goals are aspirational, so keep that in mind. They have a goal of achieving zero waste by 2030, and trash and which will entail having a trash and recycling audit to determine what residents and businesses are discarding or recycling. You can go to the next slide. And also to review our purchasing to determine what is ordered and used, especially paper and plastic supplies. You'll recall that early on this year, the board voted to stop buying water bottles. So that's along those lines. Also to encourage expanded composting in both public and private venues. I think the next slide takes it back to Elaine.
Yes, so I was super excited to work on the workforce development subcommittee with Greg Alsis and Eric Him, and Rachel Dahmer and Matt Bechtel gave incredible input to this committee. Next slide, please. The recommendations we have around workforce, a number of these are things that we've talked about for years already here in FCPS. We talked about having a standardized toolkit for counselors and career center staff. And there are a couple of national examples of this that exist already, and a number of organizations that have offered to help us putting this information together. And we did have the opportunity to speak to a number of industry people, all of whom were super excited at the idea of being part of a career fair or providing this type of information to our guidance counselors, speaking to students around project-based learning, et cetera. So we've got some great contacts. Our solar installers that will be doing what we were talking about earlier around our solar installations on the rooftops and our canopy installations, Sun Tribe, Standard Solar. We're in discussions with them. They're very excited to work with us on providing data and information for students to analyze, looking at on-site learning as our installations are happening, and talking to our students about jobs in the solar industry. Using the building as learning tools. This is something that we've talked about for many years in the Get to Green program, in collaboration with our design and construction folks and our instructional folks. And so we're looking at some of our upcoming renovations as a way to start, at least getting signage in our schools around, and county buildings around sustainability features that those buildings have, so that our students can see firsthand green infrastructure. And we would like to see CTE offer one or more green career or green economy type programs. And that could be, ranging from after school programs, could be, a new unit in a course. It could be new certification programs. It runs the gamut. And our CTE folks were super helpful in helping us define some of that. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to turn it back to Carl to conclude here.
Can we kick to the last slide and we'll come back to this one really quickly? So I wanted to note before we go to the motion that you'll see in the executive summary of the report, which is on board docs, that the report is recognizing the importance of environmental justice. All county and school initiatives undertaken as a result of these recommendations shall be implemented through the One Fairfax lens with a prioritization on equity. So I wanted to make sure that that was there. And before I go to the motion, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Jeff Plattenberg and his team, and Francine Furby for her many hours of work and support in pulling this all together. I move to direct the superintendent to bring to the board during a late spring work session a report on how the Joint Environmental Task Force's recommendations might be implemented, including monetary investments needed for budget year 2021 and beyond.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Tolan. I'm so sorry, Mr. Frisch, would you like to speak to your motion?
Like 10 seconds. I'll just note again that the Board of Supervisors voted to advance the same motion during board matters at its meeting on Tuesday. I think we can all agree that every level of government must do its part to address the threat of climate change. I look forward to working with my colleagues on the school board and the Board of Supervisors to make progress on these critical recommendations in the months and years ahead. So thank you all for indulging us this evening.
Thank you. Ms. Tolan, would you like to speak to your second?
Just very quickly, and also I just want to say again how grateful I am to work with our expert staff and our students and the community experts and the county staff to develop these goals and recommendations. As I mentioned, many of these goals are items that the school district has talked about for years. We've taken some small steps and in some cases some very large steps toward reaching these recommendations and goals already. So I think with a positive move forward on this, we can allow FCPS and the county to continue our state and national leadership in sustainability.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tolan. Any other board members that would like to speak to this motion? Seeing none, the motion before us is to direct the superintendent to bring to the board during a late spring session a report on how Joint Environmental Task Force's recommendations might be implemented, including monetary investments needed for the budget year 2021 and beyond. All in favor of this motion? We have Ms. Corbett Sanders, Ms. McLaughlin, Ms. Darnat Koufax, Ms. Cohen, Mr. Frisch, Ms. Tolan, Ms. Keys-Gamarra, Ms. Pekarsky, Ms. Seisma-Heiser, Ms. Omesh, and myself, and that is 11. Please lower your hands. This motion carries.